Hi, everyone. Welcome. We're glad to have you here this afternoon. We're excited to have so many people live today. We know you have the option to watch the video at another time, but it's always exciting to see so many people join us live. So thanks for being here. Once again, we have the sign-in sheet right in the chat. So I will continue to add that to the chat as we have people entering into our space. But once again, thanks for being here. I know it's summertime, right? And here we are still diligently working and building our background knowledge to support our kids. So we're grateful to have you join us today. My name's Colleen Whalen. I'm one of the literacy consultants on our team at Wayne. And I'm super excited to be with you for this next hour of time. My colleague Bridget is joining me today, and we're digging into foundational skills for our earliest learners. Bridget?
Welcome. Thanks so much for being here today. Again, just to echo Colleen's sentiments, my goodness, summertime, and look at how many people are on our call. So we're so excited to have you. If you've not done so already, please make sure you get signed in. You can sign in using the QR code on your phone or the link in the chat. We're going to go ahead and get started today. Here's that QR code one more time. And as Colleen mentioned, today's session is being recorded. We have a lot of content to share with you in this next hour. So we're really just going to be scratching on the surface today. So we're going to be certainly giving access to all of the resources that we're sharing today, including the slide deck. So you'll be able to go back. We've also compiled things in a nice handy resource sheet. So everything that you're seeing in the slide deck today is also all in one nice page on this link that Colleen will drop for you in the chat in just a moment. And then a few days after the session, once some of our amazing tech people behind the scenes get a hold of the recording, this will be emailed to you as well. The whole session, the recording, along with the links to the slide deck, as well as that resource sheet. If you had any colleagues that weren't able to join us today, they will also get access to the recording. It will go to anyone who registered, whether they were able to attend live or not. Just those of you that are live will actually earn the sketch credit. So again, thanks so much for being here live with us. We're super excited. All right, so as we're getting started today, here's Colleen and I, as we already mentioned, we introduced ourselves. So we're just going to jump right in. Our agenda today, you can see, is as follows. We're going to finishing up the housekeeping section. Of course, we're going to turn to the research, and then we're going to clarify some of those terms, right? Phonics, phonemic awareness, phonological awareness, all those things. They can be kind of tricky. We're going to provide you with some visuals that will hopefully make that a little easier for you. And we're going to just scratch the surface with a few effective instructional strategies just to get you going with the teaching of foundational skills in your class. And then we'll be closing. So we always like to start our sessions with checking out, seeing who's here, who's in the room. So if you could please take a moment and drop your name, your school, and your role in the chat, just like you see the example on the screen there as well. Pause for a moment and let folks do that. And Colleen will be able to see all the great colleagues from around the county that are joining us today.
Yeah, we've got many of you here today. We've got 63 that have signed on so far. We've got folks from Wyandotte, and we've got folks from folks. Oh gosh, it's jumping so fast because you're plopping them in there. We've got Lincoln Park and Gibraltar. We have Detroit Public Schools. We have Dearborn. We have some of our friends in Trenton. We have a few more people from some of our charter schools, Greenfield Union. We've got some folks from let's see, what do we have? Oh, and you know what else is wonderful? We've got a variety of specialists in the room. So we've got some classroom teachers, but I see music specialists. I see perhaps high school, which is exciting to see. We've got reading interventionists. We have some middle school folks here. Some special ed specialists in the room. It looks like some training and support coordinators from DPSCD. Wow, what a wide range of expertise in the room. We're always excited to see so many with great interest in developing our early learners.
Thank you so much, everyone, for being here again today. And what we'd like to do is kind of get a sense of where you are. We've just seen from the chat that people are coming from a wide range of experience, all the way from maybe pre-K and kindergarten up through high school. And so we know we're all going to bring something different to the session today. So if you could take a minute and read our little scale that we have here and self-assess where you think you are on the scale. Is the teaching of foundational skills new to you? You know you're supposed to teach it, right? If that's you, then perhaps that's a 1. And we're here to tell you that that is absolutely okay, right? Absolutely. Or perhaps you're already feeling pretty confident with it, but you're here to learn more. Perhaps then you would be a 4 then in that case, or maybe you're somewhere in between. So when you're ready, go ahead and drop your number in the chat where you think you're at. And we'll just watch some of those numbers come in to give us a sense of our audience. And seeing some 2s and 3s. Okay.
Yeah, we have quite a range here, Bridget. Different ranges of knowledge coming to the session around foundational skills. It's kind of nice to see a lot of 3 and 4s. So people are feeling like they've got some background experience and knowledge around teaching foundational skills, but certainly open to learning more. And Bridget and I can attest to that. Both of us have really delved into much of the research around foundational skills in these last few years. I'm sure you've heard the science of reading and science of reading wars and a little bit of the messages that are coming out in the educational world around that. And what better time than to really dig into the research to say what is best for our early learners. And we're going to touch upon some of that today.
Thanks so much for that. And again, if you're just joining the space, please make sure that you get signed in. Colleen will keep dropping that link in. But let's turn to the research. So what does the research tell us about the teaching of foundational skills? Wherever we are on the continuum, we know it's important. And of course, we want to start by, hopefully this looks familiar to you, maybe from undergraduate days, or perhaps even more recently. You know, we know the importance of becoming a skilled proficient reader is more than just the foundational skills, right? Those strands that we see on the bottom, the rope, this is Scarborough's rope. On the left-hand side in the bottom left corner, I want to draw your attention there. That is going to be our focus today, right? Focusing on phonological awareness, decoding, sight recognition. We know we need all of those things to become skilled readers. And we know those skills are woven together. But we also need those other pieces up above, the language comprehension pieces, which is going to entail background knowledge, vocabulary, language structure. So by that, we mean syntax, how those words are used in the sentences, right? As the kids know, as they're saying them, when it makes sense and when it doesn't. Verbal reasoning, things like, are we able to make an inference and make analogy? And then, of course, literacy knowledge. That's that basic. In the early grades, as kids are acquiring their skills for reading, do they know left to right? Can they do one-to-one matching? Do they know the different genres? Do they know that informational text is different story structure? All of these things work together, where our readers, our goal is to help them become increasingly strategic and then automatic, ultimately producing in fluent skilled reading. So it seems like a lot when you look at it on this rope. But Colleen and I like to start with this because we think this provides a really nice visual of what it takes to be a skilled reader, right? It is rocket science, and it does take but it is something that our students can improve. More recently, researchers Duke and Cartwright have presented this view of reading where they say, yes, everything in Scarborough growth, but we're also going to talk a bit more about those bridging processes that you see in purple in the center of this diagram. One thing that also sets this model slightly apart from the model we just saw on the previous screen is that it focuses on the reader and places an emphasis on the idea that reading is also impacted by the text, the text, the task, and the socio-cultural context that you see lifted in the upper left-hand corner. We're not going to have time to dig very deeply into this. However, there's a wonderful research article by Duke and Cartwright that outlines all of this. And the research really about, they say, yes, everything to Scarborough, and this is when they're going to add that and all of those things that you see in the green circle to the left, that idea of that active self-regulation and the role that plays. Things like we know motivation and engagement come into play with helping skilled readers, along with those executive functioning skills, and that way those strategies are used. So again, I'm just giving you a short summary of what that is all about. But if you work, if you go to Duke and Cartwright's research, you'll be able to dig a little deeper. And I'm noticing, Colleen, if people are dropping in the chat, that it's difficult to hear. I don't know if it's because there's so many people on the call. If you want to log back out and come in, I might encourage you to do that. But I'll try to bring your voice a little louder as well.
Yeah, I'm hearing a little bit of a delay, Bridget, in your voice coming through. How do I sound, everyone? Better?
You sound perfect. You sound loud and clear.
Okay.
So your sound is good. Hers is very low, and we can.
Yes.
Thank you. Thank
All right,
you.
thank
Well,
you.
I think we have a challenge with some background noise, so I can take on a little bit more, and Bridget, you might want to find a quieter spot.
That
But
sounds good. That sounds good. I'll let you take over, Colleen, on this part here.
that sounds great. We do a lot of things in tandem anyway, so we just kind of divvied up some of the slides so we can change on the fly, that's for sure. So what we really wanted to do is make sure that you were aware of all of this research. Very important that we follow suit with what researchers are finding to be the best practices within teaching foundational skills. And this is one document that we also lean into, even outside of the active view of reading. We like to look at some of the work that comes from the educational practice guide summary. What Works Clearinghouse could be familiar with some of you as well. And they really highlight some of the key pieces in helping to support our young learners, kindergarten through third grade, with those foundational skills. Bridget, next slide.
I think I don't see her picture.
Yeah, she's got her picture off, but she should still be there. There she goes. Okay, so the 4 key findings from this research coming from the Institute of Education Science talks about really lifting up students' academic language skills. And you as educators know the importance of talk in the classroom. It's really important that we allow plenty of space and time for students to be talking through their thinking. And that helps to build that academic language. It helps build that conversational language. And also to help deepen their knowledge around vocabulary. Another thing that really helps to support foundational skills in readers is to really be aware of the segments of sounds that are in speech and how they're connected to letters. And oftentimes we don't necessarily think about the separation or the specific sounds that are identified in speech. We usually talk about blending them together because that's what we want readers to do. But there's much research behind being able to understand all the precise sounds of words and all those sounds that we hear within words. And then, of course, we know another recommendation is for students to really be able to decode these words. They're able to analyze the different word parts within words and be able to write and recognize the words. And then lastly, of course, the goal, the end, where we want our readers to be, is to be able to comprehend that text and ensure that students are reading connected text each and every day to support that accuracy, fluency, and comprehension. And so the more we can get books in kids' hands, the more text that's in front of them, the better off we are, because the kids are actually able to practice all of the different skills that we're teaching.
Okay, I think I'm back now. How is the volume now? Is it a little better?
Way better, Bridget.
Okay, all right, I found a new place to land. So as we continue with the research, of course, we would be remiss if we did not talk about the early literacy essentials. So if you are not familiar with the document that you see on the right-hand side of your screen, this is definitely one that you want to be start to become familiar with right away. This comes to us from GELN, which stands for General Education Leadership Network. And this was a think tank from across really our state of Michigan. And we're so blessed to have had the lead researchers in our state work to compile this document. And what's especially exciting is that what you see on the screen right now was just updated in June of 23. So the essentials are these 10 practices that should be happening in every classroom for every child every day. And in this case, we're looking at the kindergarten through third grade essentials. However, these documents do exist from birth all the way through grade 12. There is a whole suite of these documents, but for our purposes today, we're going to zoom in on essentials 4 and 5. And here you can see with essential 4, this is really centered on these activities that build phonological awareness. And I'm going to pause for a moment and just give you a chance to read what you see in black, that header, if you will, and then take a moment and start to skim and scan through those bullet points. So I'm just going to pause and allow you to read that screen. What I'd like to invite everybody to do now, if you've had a chance to skim and scan, take a moment in the chat and list a key word or phrase that's really standing out to you. What do you notice about Essential 4? And if we're putting a little play on words here, what's most essential to you as you read Essential 4? Go ahead and drop those words or phrases in the chat, and then I'll just invite you to read your colleagues' responses as those start to come in. And Colleen, let me know what you're noticing too.
Absolutely. So we're seeing listening and creating, the doing part, blending, decoding, sorting, variations, development, daily activities, playing with sounds and words. Variation is coming up again, the playing with sounds and words, the listening, the creating, the sorting, the doing, lots of hands-on play with sounds and words and language. Segmenting, blending, segmenting. Great. Thank you so much, everyone.
Yeah, you all in this quick summary like this, especially with such a nice size group, this really gives, the words you lifted really give a sense of what phonological awareness is all about then, right? It's that idea that we're going to be promoting this type of learning through play, right? And through what students are hearing as they're working. The other thing I wanted to mention about the essential documents overall also is that these are based on actual research, educational research. So we know that it wasn't just somebody's idea in a book. So every single bullet point that you see listed in these essentials have supporting studies of actual students and educators from across the world, really, showing that these are the practices that have been proven to work, meaning that it's evidence-based. That's a really important point. And then the other important point that I wanted to lift was that these essentials are program agnostic. So in other words, nowhere in these essentials documents are we going to hear them say, everyone should use blank program or this program. Rather, these are the practices that can work. So they're really designed to work alongside the programs and the tools that you do have to teach literacy. And that's really the beauty of them, because then it allows you as practitioners um, the autonomy to make those decisions. And so as you're weeding through, often the curricular programs that are out there are so stacked full of things, it can be hard for a teacher to decide where should I place my emphasis. So the essential bullet points can help you help you vet your own materials, if you will. So if you have a curricular resource that's focused on phonological awareness, we'd invite you to put these 5 bullet points alongside that curricular tool that you have as you're making decisions about what to do and what to teach and what to perhaps exclude. Colleen, anything to add on that I missed? No?
Nope,
All right.
sounds great.
Now, this next piece of research also again comes from the Literacy Essentials. This is number 5, and you can see there's quite a bit of text on this page. Again, we're going to make sure that you have access to all of these documents. These are all completely free, and you can see Essential 5 is all about that explicit instruction and letter sound relationships. In other words, phonics, right? That's really a big part of why we're here today. So just like we did with the last essential, I'm going to invite you to skim and scan, and then what keywords and phrases are jumping out, and then please go ahead and drop those in the chat.
So some folks are starting to put some ideas in the chat around applying the knowledge that they learn around phonics, multiple channels, building relationships between letters, words, sounds, flexibility. I like that. Sounds associated with letters, systematic, and the word opportunities as well. Yeah, flexibility, systematically. Instruction fosters flexibility in children. Wow, that's a great thing to say and a hard thing to make happen.
All right, thank you everybody for engaging in that. Again, we could spend several hours just on this slide, but for sake of time, we're going to keep moving. The big idea that we want you to walk away with here is that if you've heard this term, as Colleen alluded to earlier, this idea of the science of reading, right? And you're wondering, right, am I doing what I'm supposed to be doing? Well, if you're following the literacy essentials are indeed the science of reading, because the science of reading simply means scientifically based research in education that it refers to that whole body of research in education that has proven to say these things work. There is evidence to show that these things, that these actions and strategies and philosophies are what we should be doing in our classrooms. And so if that is the exact criteria for it landing into the literacy essentials. So if you're using that as your guidebook, you are on the right track. So keep going.
One thing I wanted to mention around the essentials, we do have essentials that are appropriate starting at birth, believe it or not, all the way through grade 12. And noticing when you shared the work that you're doing and the grade levels that you are working with, we have a great span. I think it's really important for us to address the fact that building phonemic awareness, phonological awareness, phonics, might be part of the work that you're doing. There may have been some gaps along the way in children's learning. You know, we would be remiss if we didn't address some of that learning that may have happened during the pandemic. Maybe there were some pieces that were missing in the students' literacy development. So it's very important that not only our earliest educators teaching our earliest learners are really leaning into this, but we know building the strong foundation helps to support as they build the rigor, right, in the grades ahead. So I'm going to kind of go on and talk a little bit about some of these words that keep flying around, especially with us thinking around early literacy. And if you think back into college life, and maybe your courses that you were expected to take around the development of reading, you may have had one or two courses in that area. I know when I think back, I had one course that was 3 hours, 3 credit hours, and it nowhere prepared me for what I was about to partake in as I started teaching first graders. And so what we want to do is to have teachers feel empowered with words that are being thrown around, even the science of reading, being aware that, oh, that just means really good research that people in the field have gotten evidence and feedback from that says this really works. It's nothing magical, or I mean, it is magical. It's great to grab research and have that evidence behind it. But if we understand it, then we're more likely to talk through it and help parents understand where we're coming from, or colleagues that you're working side by side with. So as we continue on, we're going to see a couple of words starting with that PHON, that fun, and anything with a PHON is really meaning that sound, the meaning of sound. You'll see the word phonetics, and phonetics actually refers to that study, the scientific study of sounds in our speech. Okay, so you know phonetics, right? Well, then we hear the next term, which is phonics. So that's the kind of instruction that we would give our students to help them understand that relationship between sounds and that spoken language when we're talking, but also the symbols that represent them. So you'll see two words in parentheses there. There's the phonemes, which is the spoken language, and then the graphemes, which is actually just, you know, what we know what graph is, right? It's the written out, the letters that represent those sounds. In this lovely resource, which is research-based practices, it focuses heavily in the K2 realm, pre-K2 realm. It's called Letter Lessons in First Words. And this was a really meaningful quote that I thought you might relate to. Phonics instruction simply gives children the information about how letters and sounds work so that they can build automatic word recognition, which frees them up to be consciously paying attention to meaning. And that's ultimately what we want to do when we're teaching phonics. Okay, so phonics instruction is not a means in its end of its end in itself. It's moving on that road to reading comprehension. A few other terms we have are phonological awareness. So I like to think of that as the big umbrella, overarching umbrella. And there's many things that fall under phonological awareness. Really what it is, it's the sounds or those phonemes, what we hear when we're learning to read and spell. The phoneme, once again, that smallest unit of speech. So if I'm thinking of the letter T and I know it makes a T sound, that's a phoneme. It's the smallest unit of speech. But when we talk about phonemic awareness, it actually falls under the big umbrella of phonological awareness. They call it a subcategory. And more specifically, it's helping children being able to articulate and notice those small little nuances within sounds so they can manipulate them. They might be able to blend or segment those sounds. And I believe it is our next slide. Yes, this is a nice visual for all of you to see here, where that phonological awareness is overarching. That involves all those wonderful activities that you engage students in, helping to build rhymes and onsets in rhymes, dividing words up into syllables, recognizing how words are similar or different. And then you can see underneath phonological awareness is phonemic awareness. And that's that little piece of knowledge that kids really must be able to hear and understand to increase their likelihood for reading. And that's very sound that they're hearing in words. So they're blending, they're substituting, they are adding and deleting sounds. And yet another quote here from a wonderful resource that we have leaned heavily into in these last 2 years of really shifting the balance. We like to think about all the aspects and components within a literacy block. And this text, again, really geared towards that K2 audience, but might be relevant in any situation that you're in. She talks a little bit about the difference between phonics and phonemic awareness. I used to say this often. Actually, phonemic awareness could be done in the dark. It's what you're hearing. When you start to tackle phonics and phonemic awareness together is when you introduce the letters. Okay, so as kids are hearing sounds, it's done orally. As soon as you're starting to connect them to those letters, that becomes that integration of phonics instruction. And very important that we do that connecting when students are developmentally ready. So you might have a 2 or a 3-year-old, right? Hearing and playing with sounds and singing apples and bananas. We might not necessarily say A is for apple, but we could. When would we show them the letter A? When they're ready, right? When they've been playing with those sounds, when they've been engaged in that. And then certainly, of course, in any school setting, whether it's preschool and beyond, we would start to certainly address phonics and showing letters. Just one more term before I pass it off to Bridget is orthography. So that's another one that could be bouncing around in some conversations that you're hearing. And really, it's all about the way that words are spelled. It's those letter patterns within our alphabet system. And what we know about the English language is that it's very deep. We have deep orthography in English. And what that means is there's many ways to spell the same sound, or there's many sounds for some spellings. And so that makes our English language maybe just a little bit more layered. Not that it's tricky, it's just a little bit more layered. So it's important to know that English language is deep.
Okay, and one of the things that I think sometimes teachers, Colleen, are asking us, okay, yeah, this makes sense. I remember these terms from college and I do some of those things in my classroom, right? I do things with onset and rhyme, and I make sure that we're doing phonological awareness activities and where they're getting some, direct instruction in different word parts and word families. So what's different now, right? What's different? Because there does seem to be a movement. And I think perhaps one of the biggest things would be this idea that we're teaching phonics and phonological awareness in a really intentional way with a tight scope and sequence. To me, that is perhaps the biggest difference as I think and reflect even truly, quite frankly, on my own teaching. We knew those things were important, but I didn't necessarily have a written plan to follow where I knew that every aspect on that phonics continuum and phonological awareness continuum was covered. So it's really important that as you're embarking on this work, that you have a scope and sequence that you're following so that we're not creating gaps in our students. And I think that's probably one of the biggest things that has come out over just the last few years with this push, if you will, on the quote unquote science of reading. And so if you don't have a scope and sequence, there are some scope, I would first we'd encourage you to look to your instructional resource that you have, right, to teach phonics and phonemic awareness. And if you don't have an instructional resource, we're going to turn you to some of those today and show you where you can find different examples of scope and sequence charts and diagrams that can work to help you make sure that you're not leaving things out. Anything to add to that, Colleen, around scope and sequence, or did I get it all, would you say?
Yes, in fact, I'm going to add it to our resource page so that I'm not just plopping it in the chat for you to grab a hold of and hold on to it somewhere else. I'll place it right on the resource page. But I think it's hugely important that that you're advocates for a strong scope and sequence when you're thinking about foundational skills within the school that you're teaching. So you might ask, those people that are in charge of making those decisions, that you have the correct materials and resources that you need. There are things that are available that are free online. UFly is a resource. It's not 100% free, but much of it is. And I think as you work in conjunction with your colleagues from grades K through 5, we're following that scope and sequence.
Yeah, thank you for that, Colleen. And we'll make sure that Colleen referenced UFly. That's one of the resources that we're going to share with you as well that is based on the research. The important, I think, point that we're really trying to live with that is find out if you have a scope and sequence. Yep. Does your school have one? Does your district have one? And if you don't, we're here to tell you that you need one, right? That not just you and your classroom, but that your whole school has one and or your district so that you're following that pattern. As opposed to sprinkling in some phonics here and there, right? That's really the biggest difference. So let's step into some of these instructional practices that we know are high leverage. The first that we like to really showcase is called word chaining. You've maybe heard this referred to as making and breaking. But the beauty of word chaining is that it helps students deepen their phonics and their phonemic awareness simultaneously, right? It's going to bring both of those things together. And if we were to give it a really simple definition, you can see it's just a series of words that differ by one phoneme. So we're going to watch just a short little clip. Hopefully the sound will be okay. So Colleen, if you can let me know.
Hi, I'm Carla Budarak and welcome to Behavior Communicates. I promised you 2 more strategies for fluency and today I've got the second one. You can do what is called a word chain. It is I promised you 2 more strategies for fluency and today I've got the second one. You can do what is called a word chain. It is so simple. You simply change one letter in the word to make it easy for the student to be more automatic with their word reading. So look what I've done here. Car, cap, tap, tip, and sip. I just changed one of the letters in that word. If you have a student who needs this to be even more basic, you could just change the initial sound like this one, tan, ran, pan, and man. Or you can change the final sound like this one, bit, bin, bid, and bib, and work your way up to doing a single sound change in all positions. Give this strategy a try and watch your students' confidence grow as they see just how quickly they can say these words. Thank you so much for joining.
And that was just a really quick and simple example to show you how word chains can be done just with a single sound, as you saw there. However, word chains can also be much more complex. But before we move on to those, as you think about those single sound word changes, one of the fun things to do is to have your students make those, right? And have them play with letters and words. And you can have them decide, ooh, did I make a nonsense word or is this a real word? And kids can have a lot of fun with that. We want to, however, whoops, go ahead, Colleen.
I was just gonna say, one important thing with those word chains is to only change one letter at a time. I think that's really important because especially if you let kids go off, they're going to go crazy and start changing multiple letters at a time. So each part of the chain or each link is only one small change.
Thank you for that, Colleen. So now here is an example of a whole class lesson, just so I can set up the clip for you. I believe these kids are first, maybe end of first grade, maybe moving into second grade. So the beginning of the lesson, we're not going to watch the whole thing, but you'll have access to this clip. You're going to hear the teacher do some review with some of the diagraphs, and then you're going to see her kind of introduce the new skill where kids are practicing blending and segmenting orally aloud as a group. So here we go. Well, Colleen, my computer does not seem to want to cooperate. I think I'm going to stop sharing and see if you can pull that up, and I'll let you screen share.
Yep, sounds good.
And thank you everyone for your patience. Technology is our friend when it works, and it's our foe when it doesn't. But this clip will give you a sense of that. So Colleen, you should be able to screen share now that I've stopped. As Colleen is getting that ready to pull up, here's what I'd like to invite you to do. If you have something to write with, if you could make a T-chart, and please make note of the things that you hear the teacher saying and doing, and things that you hear the students saying and doing. And then we'll be lifting some of those in the chat after you've had a few minutes to view. So Colleen, we're going to show about the first 30 seconds of the clip. And then if you could forward after we've seen her kind of set up the review, then move to the about 3-minute and 35-second mark. And then we'll be able to see a little bit of that. And we can watch that for just maybe a minute or so.
Let's go ahead and we're going to turn our bodies, make sure you're facing the smartboard. We're going to review those digraph sounds, and then we're going to go ahead and we're going to do a chain for reading, and then we'll go ahead and do a chain for spelling, which is where you guys can come on up and you can show me how you're segmenting those sounds and you can spell those words on the smartboard. Okay. To yourself so you're not giving away the answer to your friends. Now I need to see everyone participating, everyone using their fingers to blend those sounds. Me first. Silent thumbs up and you can tell me what my word is. Marlene. Very good. Let's blend those sounds together. Everyone. Rest. Very good. If that is rest, what word do I have? If I change my beginning sound to a digraph sound. Quest. Very good. Let's blend those sounds together. Quest. Quest. Very good. If that is quest, what happens if I change that beginning sound again to this? Ruben. Best. Best. Very good. Let's blend those sounds together, everyone. Best. Best. Good. And I also saw Marlene. She was using her bed to decide if this was a b or a d sound. She made her bed b a d, and that told her that this is a b sound, like in the beginning of bed. So good job, Marlene. If that is best, what happens if I take away my s sound and then I close my gap here? What word do I have now? Kate? Bet. Very good. Let's blend those sounds together. Bet. If that is bet, what happens if I change my vowel sound to this? Emma. Bit. Very good. And I saw you using the bed strategy as well.
Okay, so hopefully that provided you with an example of what this can look like in the classroom. And one of the things that I want to make sure everyone was attending to is that those kids had some really clear routines. It's evident that they knew what it meant to blend and to segment that word apart, right? You could hear that that was a routine. But I'd like to invite you into the chat to drop, what did you notice? Something that the teacher was saying and doing. If it was something that you saw the teacher doing, put a T first and then put whatever that was something that you noticed the students doing. Let's just take a moment to do that in the chat. And we'll see what our colleagues are thinking. And then we're going to move on to another powerful instructional strategy. Yes, using the fingers to segment, making the bed to check to see if they have a B or a D, right? Students were active. They were using their fingers to kind of count those sounds. Coaching, right? These are all great examples. Change the beginning sounds first. That's a great noticing, right? So you might be thinking then, okay, this is great. How do I know which words? Did the teacher do that on the fly? Did she make that up, right? It's hard to know. So Colleen, if you go to the next slide, we're going to provide you with a wonderful free resource for word chaining in your classroom. And it comes to us from that book that we referenced earlier called The 6 Shifts. And it's, again, a really powerful resource that we've been leaning heavily into at Wayne Risa. And so we really recommend not only the book, but going onto their website where there are tons of free downloadable materials. And this is one of them. This word chain resource booklet, if you will, you could print it and have this as a booklet. And it starts from the simple and moves to the more complex. So we're making an assumption too that probably many of you have different types of screeners or assessments that are being used in your district, whether it's through NWEA or perhaps iReady, where that's assessing these kinds of things, right? To see where your students are at. Perhaps you're using spelling inventory from words their way. Whatever diagnostic tool you're using, you probably have a sense of where the majority of your class is with these skills, right? Are they still at the stage where they're learning consonant, vowel, consonant, or with single change vowels, or are they moving into multiple vowels? So this resource guide will help you do that. It would help you pinpoint an entry point or a starting place that you could do the very lesson that we just saw the teacher do. And we wouldn't want technology to be a barrier for you. You could do that work using, I've seen teachers do it with word letter cards in a pocket chart, or even just up against the easel where they're moving and changing the onset and rhyme, or changing the medial vowels or the ending sound depending on the change with those cards. Albeit it's a little trickier to do it that way, but it certainly can happen. Perhaps another way would be using, a document camera and moving some of those letter tiles around. So we'll make sure that you have access to this as well. And so Colleen, if you could go to the next slide, and we're going to skip this one for now. We talked a little bit about orthography already. There's another nice kind of definition for you. So if you could head to the next slide, please. We're going to watch just a little bit about orthographic mapping. And this is going to be another high leverage strategy that we'd encourage you to use, whether you do it small group or one-on-one. So we'll watch just a few minutes of this. In this case, this is the teacher using what's called Alconen boxes. So if you're not familiar with this strategy, this is definitely something you'll want to add to your repertoire. All right, Colleen, we're ready when you're ready, I think.
Work on our sounds and our words. All right. So
Wait, that you're crying? They look like real.
all right.
Like they are going.
All right. Here we go. All right. Hands on the table, please. Say shop.
Shut up.
We're going to say the sounds in shop. And when we say the sounds in shop, we're going to move our coins. All right. You ready? So do it with me. Ready? Here we go. Ah.
Aw.
Okay. Now we're going to write our sounds. So what was the first sound? How do we spell sh?
S-C.
No. How do we spell S? How do we spell sh?
S-C. H-S.
How do we spell sh?
S-H.
So right.
S-H.
Okay. Say the sounds in shop.
Aw.
And on this line, we're going to write the word.
What's my
No.
backwards? What's the H here?
Nope. You were right the first time. Write your P. Remember, at the bottom.
Like this?
Hold your marker like a pencil.
Okay.
Right. Now read it, princess.
Shop.
Again.
Shop.
Ring. Good.
Stop.
Again.
Stop.
Do it again, but I need you to look at your word.
Stop.
Good. What's our word?
Stop.
Very good. Erase your boards.
So you can see here, the teacher's being very intentional about the teaching and the specific sounds and separating them out, and then also bringing them together and combining them.
I think that's the beauty of that clip, right? We're seeing encoding and decoding, right, in the same short little snippet. Really powerful strategy if you've not used that. And it is something you can teach whole group as well. You can use that strategy whole group as well. Sometimes people think, oh, it's just for one-on-one or just for small group. And we would beg to differ. We don't have an example of that to show you today, but it certainly could happen whole group.
And Bridget, you just gave us two more words, the encode and decode, right? We don't
Yep.
want teachers to feel uneasy about what we mean by that. oftentimes you do use the word decoding a lot, right? When kids are learning how to decode words, but the opposite, encode, is when they're writing that word out. So they're able to isolate those sounds, but then also bring them together to write the word.
Yeah, beautiful. Thank you for clarifying that, Colleen. All right, let's go to the next slide. I'm just noticing our time. So we're really going to have to wrap this up and invite you to watch this whole group lesson really around decoding. And so it's another example of how phonics can be fun, right? And the kids are, just as you can see, the little one in the middle there, they do stomping and spelling, and the kids are working on the side with their whiteboard. So everybody's engaged. So make sure you take a peek at that. And let's go ahead to the next slide. We want to make sure we're leaving you with some of those resources. So if you're looking for a way to add decodable word lists and sentences into your repertoire, here are two great resources for you. Again, very similar to the word chaining resource. It's done in a hierarchical way from simple to more complex. And so you'd be able to use whatever those diagnostic tools are that you have in your district to kind of pinpoint a good starting place for your students. So we'll head to the next slide, and we're not going to get a chance to watch this, but we're going to invite you to watch that tip on blending. And then finally, here's a great article, a research article by Linnea Airy. And it's really kind of the down and dirty, right? And this is from 2022, but it's just what teachers need to know and do to teach letter sounds, phonemic awareness, word reading, and phonics. So we would invite you to watch that as well. And again, all of these resources are on our resource page. So let's go ahead to the next slide. And again, these are, we've been talking quite a bit about shifting the balance, the text on the left, which some of those resources come from, but we would be remiss if we did not mention that text on the right, another great resource specifically for teaching some of those routines, right? We talked earlier about the teacher in the video where we saw her kids, they really knew the routine with what they were doing. When she asked them to, put it together and to stretch that word and to blend it, they knew exactly what she meant. And so if you're looking to build some of those routines in, Dr. Julia Lindsay's book is great for that. That would be a great starting place. All right. And then finally, I think our wonderful resource that Colleen mentioned earlier, this is research and evidence-based. And what this actually is this is just what the title says. It's a free phonics curriculum to consider. Scope and sequence, detailed lesson plans for kindergarten through second grade, daily whole group lessons ready to go for you. The only expense really comes in with getting the teaching manual, and that is a must-have in order to make this work. But if you're in a setting where your district is uncertain about which direction to go to, perhaps with some curricular resources to teach foundational skills, we would highly recommend that you take a peek at this as you're making your decisions. All right, and then I think we've listed a few more resources for you that we've kind of talked about, and we're not going to have 2 minutes to do that, but hopefully you're leaving today's session with a list of things to try. And then we wanted to just finish up with some sessions that are coming further. If you want to extend your literacy learning, I will be hosting 1 hour introductory sessions around the K-3 literacy essentials. So it's 1 hour for each literacy essential. And if you attend live, you can earn a sketch credit. You do need to register through our catalog, through our Learning Stream platform, but it's free and the sessions begin in early October. And then let's see, what else do we have, Colleen? If you want to learn a little bit more about the science of reading, we're hosting a full day in-person workshop. This one does cost a little bit of money, and that's because you're going to get a great lunch along with that copy of the Shifting the Balance book. So please consider signing up for that. It's not until February. We'd love to have it packed. And then of course, the rest of this month, we have more sessions going on. So you can see tomorrow is math fluency, and the rest of the calendar. So it's not too late for you to join in on some other sessions. So Colleen, anything that I'm forgetting?
You have wrapped it up perfectly. We are so happy that you were able to join us this afternoon. If you have any questions regarding any resources that we referred to today, please reach out to Bridget or myself. We'd be happy to get back with you. And if you'd like us to do any extended learning around this, we'd also be happy to touch base with you and see how we might be able to make that work.